Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. The first time it happened, I didn't even have the words to describe how I felt. Maybe I still don't, but what I do know is that life has a way of forcing us into moments we never could have imagined for ourselves. My name is Emily. I am 43 years old. And if you were to glance at me from across the street, you'd probably think I'm just another ordinary woman living an ordinary life. But if you looked closer, if you dared to step inside my story, you would realize that appearances can be deceiving. Because what happened to me was not ordinary. It was something I never thought I would confess out loud. For most of my adult life, I had been the dependable one, the anchor who kept everything steady. I was the woman who knew how to juggle bills, school meetings, and the endless responsibilities of holding a family together. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't the type to take risks or chase wild dreams. I've built my life around stability, or at least, that's what I believed. But stability, as I learned, is far more fragile than it seems. It only takes one moment, one unexpected turn for the whole foundation to crack. My husband, Daniel, was the kind of man who seemed to carry his world on his shoulders. He had always been ambitious, always moving forward, chasing success in business with a determination that sometimes left me feeling like I was trailing behind. We had been married for almost 2 decades, and although our love was steady, it wasn't the fiery passion it had been in the early years. We had settled into a rhythm, comfortable, predictable, sometimes distant. I told myself that was normal. That's what marriage becomes after so many years. But deep down, a quiet part of me longed for something more, something that made me feel alive again. Everything changed when Daniel's father, Richard, fell ill. Richard was a man of great pride, the kind who never asked for help from anyone. He had always been the strong, almost intimidating presence in the room, commanding respect without needing to say a word. But illness strips away pride, and when the doctor's words turned our world upside down, Richard needed us in a way I had never seen before. Daniel was torn. His business demanded constant attention, and stepping away wasn't easy. Yet Richard couldn't be left alone. The responsibility of care fell into my hands almost by default. I didn't complain. I told myself I could handle it. After all, wasn't that who I was? It's a dependable one. At first, it was small things. Picking up his medication, dropping by to make sure he had eaten, helping with bills and appointments. But soon the responsibilities grew heavier. Richard's health declined more rapidly than any of us anticipated, and what had begun as small acts of kindness turned into full days of caregiving. I found myself in his house more than my own. I cooked for him, cleaned, sat with him during his treatments, sometimes simply kept him company when the silence of an empty house felt too heavy for him to bear. It wasn't easy. Caring for someone who was once so strong, who now struggled with weakness, came with a weight I hadn't expected. I would watch him from the kitchen doorway, his broad shoulders hunched, his once powerful hands trembling as he tried to lift a glass of water. There was something profoundly humbling about it. And something else, something I didn't want to admit to myself at the time. A strange connection began forming between us, one that didn't fit neatly into any category one could explain. Richard and I really talked in ways Daniel and I hadn't in years. Sometimes, late in the evening, after I had tidied up and was about to leave, he would ask me to sit a little longer. We would talk about everything: his regrets, his memories of raising Daniel, my frustrations, my quiet loneliness. He listened in a way Daniel hadn't in a long time. His voice, though weaker now, carried warmth and depth. And little by little, I began to look forward to those conversations more than I cared to admit. But it wasn't just the conversations. It was the unspoken moments. The way his eyes lingered on me when I bent to pick something up. The way his hand brushed mine when I helped him steady himself. The way he sometimes looked at me as though he could see past the roles we were both trapped in, past the titles of father-in-law and daughter-in-law, into something raw, unfiltered, human. I told myself it was nothing, just gratitude. Just? A bond formed through the strain of illness. But late at night, lying awake beside Daniel, I couldn't ignore the way my mind drifted back to Richard. To the way his voice softened when he said my name. To the way my heart raced in moments it shouldn't have. The moment everything shifted happened on a quiet afternoon. Daniel was away on a business trip, as he often was. I had just finished folding Richard's laundry and was about to leave when he called out to me from his chair. His voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Emily," he said, "could you sit with me for a while?" Something in his tone made me pause. It wasn't just loneliness, it was something deeper. I sat down telling myself it was harmless, but when I looked into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Longing, recognition. The kind of look that reminded me I was a woman before I was anything else, a caregiver, a wife, a daughter-in-law. Just a woman, seen in a way I had almost forgotten was possible. And then, before I could think, before I could rationalize, it happened. He leaned closer, and I didn't move away. Our breaths mingled in the stillness of that room, and for a moment, the whole world seemed to stop. My heart pounded in my chest as though it knew what my mind refused to admit, that I wanted this. That I had been wanting this without realizing it. When his lips brushed mine, it felt like a dam breaking inside me. A flood of emotions I had kept, buried for years, surged to the surface: desire, loneliness, guilt. Longing, all tangled together in a way that left me breathless. And instead of pulling away, instead of reminding myself of all the reasons this was wrong, I let it happen. Because in that moment, I couldn't say no. What followed was a blur of emotions so intense that even now, I struggle to put them into words. It wasn't just about physical closeness. It was about being seen, being wanted, being alive again in a way I hadn't felt in years. For those fleeting minutes, I wasn't the dependable one. I wasn't the one carrying everyone else's burdens. I was just a woman, lost in something that felt both terrifying and undeniable. When it ended, reality came crashing back with a weight that nearly crushed me. I pulled away, breathless, my hands trembling. Richard's eyes met mine, filled with the same storm of emotions I felt: desire, guilt, fear. We didn't speak. We couldn't. The silence between us was louder than any words. I left his house that day with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Driving home, I kept replaying it in my mind, telling myself it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again. And yet, deep down, I knew something had changed forever. That night, lying beside Daniel, I felt the crushing weight of guilt settle over me. I turned away from him, tears stinging my eyes. He had no idea. He trusted me. He trusted both of us. And yet, in the quiet of my heart, I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. The days that followed were torture. Every time I went back to Richard's house, the air between us crackled with unspoken tension. We avoided each other's eyes, avoided being too close, but the pull was there. It lingered in the way his hand brushed mine when I passed him at glass, in the way his voice caught when he thanked me for something simple, in the way I found myself standing a little too close, lingering a little too long. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that it had been a one-time mistake. But the truth was, it wasn't. Because once that line is crossed, you can't go back. No matter how hard you try, the memory lives in you, feeding the longing, tempting you, breaking you apart piece by piece. And that's when Daniel asked something of me that turned my world upside down. He wanted me to take on even more responsibility for his father, to be there more often, to care for him in ways Daniel simply couldn't with his work schedule. He looked at me with trust, with gratitude, with love, and I nodded, because how could I say no? How could I tell him the truth, that every moment I spent with his father was pulling me deeper into something I didn't know how to escape? I didn't know then how far it would go. I didn't know the choices I would make, the lies I would tell, the pieces of myself I would lose along the way. All I knew was that one unexpected moment had changed everything. And that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't undo it, Because sometimes life doesn't give you neat answers. Sometimes it just gives you moments that test every boundary you thought you had. And sometimes, when someone walks into your life unexpectedly, you find that you don't have the strength to say no, Evan, when you know you should.